Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 24 team in my 2026 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Carolina Panthers, a playoff team from last year, a divisional champion from last year, but I'm not all that sure that they're in for that repeat that people are thinking. I think maybe there's a little bit of shades of that 2022 New York Giants football team that overachieved, got into the playoffs, took advantage of some better teams that were struggling at the time, and then kind of set the expectations incredibly high moving forward. That kind of screwed up the trajectory of a rebuild, of a retooling, or whatever you want to call it, and put them in the position they're in now, where it looks like they're finally turning around. I think Carolina now falls into that category. I think they're just bound to disappoint the fan base. Now, it's not from a lack of great coaching. The coaching, I think, is a huge reason why the Carolina Panthers had the success they had with Canales, with Ejiro Evero. They had just a really good combination there. And, J.C. Horn really played well. Mike Jackson really played well together. We saw some great performances, inconsistently great performances from Bryce Young, where he was so up and down, and he's such an anomaly at this point because just last year I had him graded so incredibly high. This year, maybe not so much. He's a hard guy to follow. What kind of an offense are they going to be running to really get the best out of him? They have kind of downgraded in the running back room as well, losing Rico Dowdle, but Chuba Hubbard getting back into the starting spot. We'll see if he can bounce back to what he was 2 years ago before the Rico Dowdle signing of last year. We got Ted McMillan going to his second year. Awesome. But where was the upgrade in the wide receiver room? They drafted Chris Brazzell from Tennessee, but he's like that one side of the field guy. Is Xavier Legette going to develop? They got Jalen Coker, a sneaky good oversized slot player. Jimmy Horn with all that speed as well. John Mechie has been brought in as well. The tight end room is very weak. I'm surprised they didn't take a swing at that. The offensive line is the cream of the crop for this organization. They really invested in two key positions on the defense side of the ball with signing Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd. Some really good additions there. So they're not from the lack of being aggressive, at least in certain aspects of trying to become better. I just question whether or not they did enough to become better on the offensive side, and that falls on the shoulders of Dave Canales, the head coach. I gotta say, Dave Canales coached his butt off last year, man. He was looking like somebody who was potentially on the hot seat just from how bad that first year went, and he had this team firing on all cylinders last year. He comes as my 14th ranked head coach in that upper tier. He's got a really good staff with him too, a tier 2 offensive coaching, tier 2 defensive coaching. We'll start with offense coordinator Brad Idzik and Dave Canales as a pairing here on the offensive side of the ball. Canales, is willing to sort of delegate the play calling here to Idzik. Takes a broader head coaching involvement, but the offensive scheme is incredibly consistent from what we've seen Canales do in the past. And there's a heavy focus on the ground attack here. He wants to dictate everything through the run, set up some play action passes. You're going to see some power and zone blocking, a nice little mix, a nice running back rotation coming in. They lost Rico Dowdle. We'll see how Jonathan Brooks gets worked into this with Chuba Hubbard. I think there'll be a heavier zone emphasis though, with some play action reliancy, getting the bootlegs out there to help out Bryce Young, get him outside the pocket, to eliminate the disadvantages of his size, make his reads a little bit easier, work some high-low route combinations, just to make things much simpler and easier for Bryce Young to execute, get him outside the pocket, let him use his legs. What we're going to see is they love using the tight ends, having the tight ends involved in pass protection, in running routes, in the run game, heavy in the run blocking. And they use them as that safety valve for Bryce Young. So when we see those high-low route combinations, the tight end will be there working that intermediate to short area with the receiver like Ted McMillan blowing the top off the defense, with a little bit of running back combination there in the flat as well. Maybe the slot guy working the intermediate level if the tight end is working more in the short areas. But the big thing is going to be ball security. Dave Canales wants to run offense where there's not a lot of high risk of turnover. Keep the ball in your hands. Dictate the pace of the game. Dictate as much of the game as you possibly can. And I think that is going to be a real staple of what this offense is going to have to look like again this year in order for them to have success. And then you have on the defensive side of the ball, the cockroach that keeps surviving all the regimes. A guy who I have not been particularly high on all that often over the last couple of years, but man, he just keeps sticking around. He's made it, he's lasted, and that's Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator. And listen, he's made his way all the way up to tier 2 for me. So that's about as good as it's going to get for you Panther fans, who I love and adore so much. What you're going to expect from Evero is that base 3-4, heavy in the 2 high safety, Fangio style, so you get light boxes, discipline zone alignment, strong emphasis on limiting the amount of explosive plays that the offenses are going to be able to execute, keeping everything in front of you type of strategy. Some of the strengths I get, linebackers, the positional versatility of the linebackers comes into play here, and the safeties. You like to mix and match those guys around quite a bit. And being efficient in the red zone. I think the position versatility and the 2 high safety looks really help with the red zone efficiency and preventing the touchdowns, and preventing big plays is also key to red zone efficiency as well. But that does open them up, like most Fangio defenses. It does open them up to, getting exploited a little bit. The pass rush kind of gets, put on blast a little bit. And you're susceptible to, you're pretty susceptible to explosive running plays because you're generally playing with lighter boxes with the 2 high safety looks. So when you run into some of these teams in your division that have been building up their running back rooms, Atlanta with Bijan, Tampa with Bucky Irving, Atlanta with Etienne and Kamara and all those guys, you're going to leave yourself a little susceptible. So you're going to need some very consistent play from your front 7, your front 6, however you want to roll them out, in their gap discipline in order to really prevent these explosive runs from happening, because you're preventing the explosive pass and daring the opposing team to run on you. So you need strong performances up front in run defense. But overall, this group, this group won the division last year, right? I know that division was not great, but you just see from a pure talent perspective, they really coached these guys to be much better than what they actually are. They coached better performances, better team efforts out of these guys than what was really on the table for them, position by position, skill wise. And we'll get to all those, but I can't really speak highly enough of what this group was able to do. And now, by no means were they like these elite level coaches, because at the end of the day, Carolina won a division that nobody apparently wanted to win last year. It was just like a race for the bottom with that division. So as other teams improved pretty dramatically, how are they going to keep up? How are they going to find ways to improve? I think that's the challenge of this coaching staff moving forward. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up on the video. Well, both of those things help with the algorithms, and they sort of just work in coalition with each other to really help me out and grow this channel so more people can see this and more people can watch these hour-long deep dive videos after I'm sure you've consumed the 2.5 hour long TFG ones. Compare and contrast. How about that? And now we're going to get to the player grades, and we're going to start with the quarterback position. And here's the true wild card position of the entire team, and that is the quarterback position. I got Bryce Young coming in, 78 grade. That's 23rd in the league. Now, I've been incredibly high on Bryce Young. I've been incredibly low on Bryce Young. And that's because Bryce Young is one of the most inconsistent quarterbacks in the last 5 years. Like, it is incredible. He'll have a game where you're like, this guy's a top 10 quarterback in the league. And then he'll have 2 games in a row where you're like, I can't believe he even gets paid to play football. It is amazing to see. And look at the way he grades against other quarterbacks in the league in these positions, right? He was the 9th best quarterback last year against pressure. He had the 2nd best deep ball, the 3rd best short area work, 9th in adjusted completion percentage, but then was 30th against the blitz, barely top 20 when they didn't blitz. When he was kept clean, he was 36th. That means there was 3 backup quarterbacks that were better than him when kept clean. It's like he played under pressure, and his ability to play under pressure and scramble around, that's almost like where he's most comfortable. Like when he doesn't have to play within structure, when he can get away, when they maybe have a good little pre-snap read, he still can't do it because against the blitz, he's 30th. But like when he identifies it late, it's like he almost plays better. And then he just whips the ball deep down the field, apparently, or checks it down, and it's perfect. But then if he has to play within 11 to 19 yards, he's 39th in the league. You know, he was 20th in pressure faults, 25th in play action. They didn't have much of a play action game. They didn't make a lot of big time throws. He was 21st. 15th in turnover worthy plays. So that was about on par with the big time throws he was making. It was just a headache to watch him because, man, Bryce Young will come out, right? He'll come out and he'll play with such great poise and athleticism, and he'll step into throws, and he'll throw like these beautiful passes, these wonderful out routes or deep comebacks and all that, and you just go, wow, every bit the number 1 pick. And then he'll bounce a ball 25 yards away from the intended receiver. He'll throw it right into the face mask of a defensive player, and he'll just completely fall apart. And you'll be talking about, like, wasn't Andy Dalton supposed to be the starting quarterback here? Now, I know Dalton's not there anymore. It's Kenny Pickett, so they've committed significantly more to Bryce Young now. But Bryce Young ended 2 seasons ago looking like this world-beating quarterback, and he never really got back to that this year. Yeah, the Carolina team had a lot of success, but it was every bit a team effort. It was a great coaching effort. What is Bryce Young? Is he Kyler Murray? Or is he Russell Wilson? Right? Like, I'm not talking current Russell Wilson. I'm talking like the good Russell Wilson. Are we ever going to get a chance to find out? Or is this just who he's going to be? Just a wave riding quarterback where week to week you just don't know what you're going to get. Where he'll play against a good team and he'll actually keep the offense competitive and keep the game tight, take leads, or is he going to play against a team that Carolina should be walking all over and then just stink the joint out? And that is the most frustrating part about having him as the quarterback of this team, is that the quarterback position, you want to know at least what the floor is on a week-to-week basis. What's the floor and what's the ceiling of what we can do? Because now we can properly strategize and plan around our opponent and play to our strengths and play against their weaknesses. But Bryce Young's strengths and weaknesses changes every week. It's a fascinating case study. And a very frustrating one. It's an incredibly frustrating case study for Bryce Young. Because he's a guy who doesn't have great size. He's a guy who, has to rely on his ability to get outside the pocket, which is greatly designed by Canales and Idzik. But I also think he needs some effective weapons here. And I see Kenny Pickett coming in as the backup, and I get that. I get that because Kenny Pickett's got like this weird versatility to his game. So him sort of being Bryce Young's backup doesn't change the offense oh so drastically. I just want to see this summer Bryce Young tone down the inconsistency. I think that is the true key to this team's success in this upcoming season, because you can't just bank on the division being that bad again. You can't bank on the coaching staff just pulling a rabbit out of their hat in key situations and everything falling into place perfectly for you the way it did last year. It's just not realistic. And that's why they rank as low as that they do, because it's just not realistic for this roster to be able to do that, and especially Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young last year might have been ranked as like my 11th best quarterback. I think he was like hovering around top 10 going into last year, because that's what he looked like. He couldn't miss a passing window at the end of 2024. And then he comes in 2025 and it's like the exact same throws in the exact same situation. It just has the exact opposite result. And sometimes he looks like the most poised and confident quarterback, and other times he looks like a complete idiot. I don't know what to think. That's why he's 23rd. You guys tell me in the comment section what you think. Where is Bryce Young? Is 23rd a fair analysis? Because, again, sometimes he's top 10, sometimes he's bottom 3. So, meet in the middle? And he doesn't have the best weapons room either. And that is concerning. It's 30th to 31st. We just covered Washington in the previous video. This is a very, very similar group, I must say. A little bit more of an upside, though, which is something I would really watch for out of this group. But let's start with Ted McMillan, last year's number 1 pick. Fantastic rookie campaign, 70 catches, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Looked like a legit number 1 receiver for most of the year. When he got good quarterback play, he looked great. When he got bad quarterback play, he looked fine. So that's pretty much where you want to live. 25th against man, 26th against zone. He got into the slot 20% of his snaps and was actually ranked 11th amongst receivers when he did line up in the slot. Wasn't a big run after catch guy, yards after catch guy. He's mostly just a true prototypical big-bodied outside wide receiver. Good catch radius. Had a little bit of the case of the Butterfingers for a bit there, 71st in drops percentage, which is a huge log jam of guys there. I get that, but still you want to be in at least the top 40 in drops percentage. Got to clean that up. I didn't like the contested catch, him being 88th. You need a guy of his size, his stature, his role. That needs to drastically improve. He needs to get that contested catch rate up. Because for all intents and purposes, Ted McMillan comes in prototypically kind of like a T. Higgins, I would say. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I would say it's pretty close to that. Like a better T. Higgins. So you want to see the contested catch get better. But very consistent in all 3 levels of the field, deep, intermediate, short areas. He's really the opposite of what you were getting out of Bryce Young, which was complete inconsistency. You get consistent good play out of Teteroa and McMillan in his rookie year. And now in his second year with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more experience, he could take a step up to even the next level now and truly establish himself as one of like those top 12 wide receivers in the whole league. But to me, it all depends on what's going on opposite of him. We talked about this with Terry McLaurin is if there's nothing going on opposite, then the production is almost impossible to land on. And they have thrown, to their credit, assets and assets and assets at this group. Xavier Legette, what is he ever going to become the number 2 outside receiver? You got Jalen Coker, who's a great big slot. Number 1 in drops percentage, number 1 in contested catch percentage last year. He didn't drop anything, and in traffic, he was catching everything. 33 catches, 394 yards. Again, as that big slot. Didn't really work deep down the field or behind the line of scrimmage. Worked in that 0 to 19 yard range. Did really well against man coverage because he does have that stature and the bigger slot ability. So it's hard to match up against him when he does line up in that slot role where he was about 58 to 59% of his snaps last year. And I expect that number to be the same, relatively the same, because having a big slot is actually very beneficial to a smaller quarterback because you want to be able to see the guy, right? I think Coker has all the tools to be a really good receiver in this league. We'll see how he gets more opportunities and he improves as he sort of slides into like a Chris Godwin type role in this offense. If we're going back to previous Canales coaching roles on other teams, I'd like to see him better against zone though, because he needs to learn how to settle in certain zones a little bit better rather than just running through and running himself into coverage. But I think that takes also building chemistry with the quarterback, understanding what the quarterback is doing, and when the quarterback himself doesn't even understand what he's doing apparently on a play-to-play basis, that is obviously going to be harder for a younger receiver to develop. But that should be a huge focus for this team throughout the summer going into this regular season, because you got a rare archetype here, like a very rare big slot receiver who was able to execute incredibly well. Then you mix in the speed of Jimmy Horn Jr., the former Colorado wide receiver. You drafted Chris Brazzell, who plays on just one side of the field. So I guess when Ted McMillan is not playing on that side of the field, you can theoretically put him in. I think him and Xavier Legette are like part of, and John Mechie, I think to a degree too, are part of the assets you just kind of throw at the wall. And you're like, somebody here is going to be good. Between Legette, Jimmy Horn, Chris Brazzell, John Mechie, one of these guys is going to end up being really good this year. Just a matter of which one. We got McMillan on the outside. We got Coker. We got him in the slot. Someone else do something for us. And it ain't going to be a tight end. They love using the tight ends, but I don't understand for the life of me why they wouldn't improve the tight end room. I don't understand it. I don't get it. They had Kenyon Sadiq right there, and they didn't take him. So they're riding Tommy Tremble and Jatavian Sanders and all those other guys, and what a nightmare for the tight end position. So not a whole lot going on there, even though they're going to get used quite often throughout the duration of a game in a season. They're going to play a significant role. They just really need a better one. I'm sorry. Call me a hater. I like Chuba Hubbard out of the backfield a little bit, mixing in Trevor Etienne as well. That's going to be Etienne's role, is being mostly just a receiving back. But Chuba Hubbard's your all-purpose 3-down back. Now that he's back to being like the true number one without Rico Dowdle there, I think we'll see him get back to what he was 2 years ago, which was more of like a top peak receiving back in particular as well, like great in screens and swing passes. Really outperformed what his initial skill set was when he came into the league. It's just another weapons group that is incredibly top heavy. and need to find someone to establish themselves as that true number 2 receiving threat on a consistent basis. I think they got enough bodies out here to do it. It's just hard to say which one it's going to be. So we get into the running back room here and there, 28th to 29th. Again, Chuba Hubbard, regressed a little bit. Now getting thrust back into as a true starter. We'll see how he can get back to that level like we just talked about. Bryce Young, get this out of the way, tier 4 boost as a rushing threat at quarterback, with those bootlegs and the read options and RPOs and all that. Should be interesting to watch him run around like crazy again. But Chuba Hubbard is the focus of this run game. Last year, only 84 zone carries, 44 gap carries, had 511 yards, less than 4 yards a carry. Only had 1 touchdown. I don't understand how he lost his starting job after the season he had 2 years prior. But he came out as a backup and kind of got put in crap situations all year. 128 carries. Now that he's going to get back to the 200 role, we'll see if he can bounce back. And it's going to be the mental hurdle of it, of course, of regaining the confidence, because can't have a lot of confidence having less than 4 yards a carry. Only 13 missed tackles forced. 1 touchdown, 1 fumble. Not a great ratio. But I like Chuba Hubbard, man. I don't understand what went wrong here. Because 2 years ago, you run the tape from 2 years ago and you compare it to the tape last year, and it's like 2 different guys. And I don't get it. I don't get what happened here. He was a great all-around running back just 2 years ago. Great between the tackles, great speed on the outside, great patience, great anticipation. Set up guys really well to help set up his blockers and the cutback lanes and all that. He did great, and he had great explosive plays. He didn't have any 15-plus yard runs last year. None. And he was such an explosive runner 2 years prior. Just a monster of a talent. Really came into his own. Really outplayed his draft position. And then I don't know if it was like sour grapes because they brought in Rico Dowdle and he kind of became the starter and the competition got to him. I don't know. I don't know. Was it just bad? Was it just a bad year? A down year? I don't know. It's hard to tell. But now he's got Jonathan Brooks, who they invested a 2nd-round pick in not that long ago. Finally healthy, you hope. What does that look like for Hubbard now? Because we've seen that they're more than happy to let a very similar back to Jonathan Brooks be the number 1 guy. You don't need to worry about Trevor Etienne. He's just a receiving back. A.J. Dillon is like a power back, kind of, but not really. It's really going to be interesting what they do with Jonathan Brooks. And if a healthy Jonathan Brooks can be as good as people were thinking he was going to be when healthy. Has it just been too much? Has it just been too many injuries compounding on each other, though? This is really, it's nut cutting time on Jonathan Brooks now. So I think working him in slowly, but letting Chuba Hubbard get some momentum, because maybe that's what was holding Hubbard back. He couldn't get a rhythm going in games. You play 17 games, you have 120 carries. Like you're getting 8 carries a game. That's not, you can't get a rhythm going. You can't get the body calluses going from the contact and all that. So I do wonder how they're going to deploy this backfield. It can be an effective backfield if done correctly, and if they build up a good passing game to open up opportunities for the running attack. But if Bryce Young just plays inconsistent, they're facing a lot of heavy boxes, and they're more focused on running back by committee type of strategies, then I don't know that they have the bodies that are going to pull off a really effective running back by committee strategy. I would much rather them just focus on Chuba Hubbard, get him 75 to 80% of the touches, and go from there. But we'll see what happens. Now let's get to the offensive line. And this is one of the better aspects of this team. I got them 8th to 12th in pass blocking, 15th to 17th in run blocking. And you see they've notoriously had great depth. They brought in, Ike Ekwonu, probably not going to see the field early this season. They brought in Rasheed Walker. They also drafted Monroe Freeling, a good high ceiling project guy from the first round that maybe won't play at all this year, but boy, does it look like they're ready to move on from Taylor Moton with that pickup. Good interior work, got a nice little, rookie in Sam Hecht to be like a developmental interior lineman. But it starts with Rasheed Walker, who was brought in specifically to play in replacement of Ike Ekwonu while he's hurt. And basically be like, we'll see what we get out of Walker, and then we'll work on Ekwonu from there. But coming over from Green Bay, he was fine. He was 70th in pressures, 77th in hurries, 5th in hits, only gave up 5 sacks. Wasn't the greatest run blocker. Coming into a zone heavy system, being the 84th ranked zone run blocker as a tackle. Not great, which is why that grade is lower. But I think as a glorified replacement level starter, I think he played like a low end starter for most of his year last year in Green Bay. I think as a late round pick, he slowly established himself as like a low end starter. And I think as a replacement level starter here, he's more than viable. It's just, there's just a lot of weaknesses to his game. So I don't know that long-term is the plan and should be the plan. But as just a pure Band-Aid signing, it was probably hard to find someone better. I'll say that. And, they hedged their bets with Monroe Freeling as well. So, all things considered, they were committed to not having Ike Ekwonu's injury be a real issue for them. And you're hoping under a different scheme, maybe with a more versatile quarterback with more bootlegs and play action expected, that it'll ease a bit of what was hindering Rasheed Walker last year in Green Bay. That really just had Jordan Love as your drop back passer. Malik Willis was sort of a wild card back there. Hard to really anticipate what he was going to be doing. So we'll see if a little bit more consistency, ironically, at the very least in terms of the strategy for bootlegs and play action, will ease the pass rush and open up more opportunities for Rasheed Walker to have play with more leverage and more of an advantage. And then as we move next to him, it's Damian Lewis, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the entire league. Again, really beneficial to have him next to Walker. Because having those guys being able to pair off, communicate, having Lewis know and be able to anticipate the stunts and the blitzes and the slanting and all that, and being able to communicate that stuff to Walker, it's only going to help Walker perform at a higher level. Lewis, he had 1 sack given up. He was 18th in pressures, given up 15th in hurries. He was 46th in hits. That was kind of an anomaly to his game here, because he was the 3rd best gap blocking guard, 22nd in zone. So just an overall really versatile, good player. Can play with strength, can play with some speed and athleticism, good punches, really good at getting to the second level and getting on those linebackers, understands when to break off of the double teams really well. And I think that creating cutback lanes and whatnot for guys like Chuba Hubbard is going to really help out this running attack. And being able to communicate and help out the rest of the offensive line that got him playing next to him as well, because Walker and Fortner at center are really sort of on the lower end. Luke Fortner is a decent starting center. Again, he's somebody you're not afraid to try and upgrade from, but I think a solid starting center in this league right now. Robert Hunt's sort of been on the downturn a bit, and this is where, I'll break off into the talks of Ike Ekwonu's inevitable return to the team. That could very well happen. I don't know that he's been at this point completely shut down. But when he does inevitably return, you have Rasheed Walker. What if Rasheed Walker's playing well? You drafted Monroe Freeling, who's a tackle. Do you contemplate moving Ike Ekwonu to the right guard spot over Robert Hunt? How much does Ike play into being a guard? Is it just a matter of you put him at guard because he is an upgrade? How much of an upgrade? Not sure until you do it. But I think there's a real possibility that at some point this season, the starting offensive line is Rasheed Walker, Damian Lewis, Luke Fortner, Ike Ekwonu, and Monroe Freeling. And that's because for some reason, with bringing in Walker, drafting a right tackle, Taylor Moton, who's one of the most surefire right tackles in the NFL since he got here, they seemingly just don't want him anymore. And he's like a great play him, plug him and leave him. Don't think about him right tackles. Gave up 3 sacks, 35th amongst tackles and pressures, 33rd in hurries, 46 hits. 20th zone blocking, 15th run block, gap blocking. Didn't have the best year as a pass blocker in his career. But he is, he's a top 10 right tackle in the NFL. Was he ever Lane Johnson? No. But he's never been a detriment to this team in the way they execute the offensive line. He's at times been their best offensive lineman. Worst case scenario, he's been their second best offensive lineman, depending on how Lewis or Icky were playing, or whoever else they had. I really like Taylor Moton. It's hard to find a flaw in his game. He can get out in space in some wide zones. He can be a good pulling option with the athleticism to get to where he needs to be fast. He's great at coming off of the block gain to the second level. He's great with his hands and his feet in pass protection. He's really great at anticipating the stunts to be able to not get lost and open up those big gaps between the guard and the tackle. Understanding where pressure is coming from, understanding what defenses are going to do, understanding what the quarterback is going to want to do behind him in certain situations against certain pressures. Taylor Moton does all that really well. So it's tough to understand what the strategy is here. He's not even a particularly old player either. So it just seems like they just want to get cheaper on the offensive line, and he seems to be the odd one out here. I'll be interested to see how long he lasts here on this team, and if he is a trade deadline guy, or if he's a training camp trade or whatever, because I guess it all depends really on how they feel about Monroe Freeling and his development. But also I think that not knowing when Icky's coming back, I don't know that Moton is necessarily smart to move on from right now. But again, the target is on his back. It's a good offensive line. It will drop a little bit with him gone. I think Freeling is coming in as a pretty solid pass blocker, but from a run blocking perspective, I don't have a whole lot of faith that he's going to be all that good. So that would really suffer that aspect. But maybe Icky comes back, you'll like him at right tackle more than guard. I think you improve in the run blocking, but you lose some in the pass blocking. So I think it would more balance out what you have here. I think that Icky and Moton from an overall perspective are pretty similar. So I don't think you lose a whole lot from your top of your offensive line. I think, again, the ideal situation is Icky comes back, plays guard for Robert Hunt instead, and Moton sticks around. And then I think you got top 10 run blocking and top 5 pass protection which would be wondrous for what you can then produce from an offensive production standpoint. But overall, it is my 27th ranked offense, tier 2 with the offensive coaching, 25th pass offense, 27th rush offense. Great offensive line, but just way too many question marks from the quote-unquote skill positions right now for this team. Now let's go to the defensive side of the ball, where they made their biggest splashes in free agency, particularly in the front seven here. They made it their business to make this defensive line better. And with the style of defense they run, the Fangio style, you are susceptible if you're to big runs and getting kind of picked apart nickel and dime down the field if you don't get a great pass rush. And that's why these last 2 seasons they've committed to improving the edge room, and then taking the big swing, of course, at Jalen Phillips this past free agency, signing him to a pretty big deal. He had only had 5 sacks last year, but from a disruption standpoint, he was very good. He was 9th in pressures, 8th in pass rush win percentage, 5th in quarterback hurries, 10th in batted balls. The sacks are going to come. With that type of disruption, that type of production, and all those other aspects, eventually the sacks will come, right? Like, you're creating all that pressure. Other guys are going to eat off of that, right? It is a team sport at the end of the day. And Jalen Phillips, from his time in Miami, then going to Philadelphia, when he was healthy, he looked really great. He's been a great edge rusher since coming into the league when healthy. Got over a lot of the concussion concerns that he had at Miami from LSU, where he developed them. Great balance to his game, great all-around pass rusher. But he does need to produce the actual sacks. Getting just close enough sometimes isn't good enough, because it doesn't necessarily, you can't always rely on everyone else to clean it up what you can't clean up yourself. His missed tackles were a little bit of a concern. Good stops percentage though, 38th. Not much versatility in bumping from the 5-7 wide 9 tech. Coming in, playing some 4, maybe some 3 every now and then. Doesn't really have that. Just mostly, line up against the tackle and beat the tackle on the outside shoulder if you can. Hit some good pass rush moves, hopefully. But there's a lot of pressure on him to be the top dog now. Like, he's always kind of been put in that position since he came into the league, but I think he's truly, really in it now with the paycheck to balance that out. Opposite of him, you get Nick Scorton, and a combination of him and Princely Umanamilean, who were drafted actually together in the same draft last year. You're looking for one of those guys to be a breakout guy. I think in run defense, though, I think Patrick Jones is just the better option. And I think from an overall perspective, could probably see more snaps than Scorton if Scorton doesn't perform at a high level from a pass rushing perspective. I think they would then rely on the run defending guy, the more fundamentally sound tactical edge player than someone like Scorton. But then you get to the interior, and they, again, made a commitment for the run defense, 15th to 18th in run defense. Again, with the light boxes, you got to play a little bit heavier here, and they got 3 really good guys here. You got Derek Brown, who, again, when healthy, is one of the top interior defensive linemen in the whole league. B-gap snap, line up in that 3 tech. He kicks out into the 4-eye quite a bit last season. 308 snaps lined up directly over the tackle. So that's an interesting little role for him to play there. And when you get into more of those over alignments with him and Jalen Phillips on the outside and him lined up over the tackle, that's going to be interesting to see how an offensive line responds to that. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles, 11th in missed tackle percentage. He was he was 11th in sacks, 25th in pressures, 55th in win percentage. So he was a little, he was that middle of the pack interior defensive line pass rusher last year. But, faced so many double teams and was winning off of those double teams. Able to finish sacks, getting his hands up in the right situations, first in batted balls, 6th in forced fumbles, 16th in stops percentage. Like, for 808 snaps, he did very, very well. And we'll look to see him now with another healthy season, playing next to now Jalen Phillips, a legitimate number one edge player, how that's going to open up opportunities for Derek Brown in this upcoming season. And then it's just a matter of who's going to be playing next to him, and I think it's all situationally based. You have Bobby Brown, who much more of a run defender than a pass rusher, going to be more of like that early down interior guy. And then when they get into more pure passing situations, you'll see Tershawn Wharton come in, because they're sort of the exact opposite of each other. Wharton's not a great run defender, but he's a good pass rusher. Bobby Brown's the opposite. I think you look at Lee Hunter, who they brought in the draft, a little bit more balance there, lean more on the run defense, but we'll see how he gets mixed into this group as well, because you anticipate he is going to get some usage here. And again, it's just from what we talked about for what they're susceptible to, they really truly made a commitment the last 2 off seasons to dialing in that aspect and getting strong trench play and trying to get strong trench play at least to prevent those big plays and allow them to run the style of defense that they want to run, which we've seen Fangio get so much production out of. And of course, Phillips coming over from being really tied to the Fangio defense, with Miami and Philadelphia, to come in and really slide into a defense he understands, where he really understands what his role is. I think that's a smooth transition for him to have as well. And he understands what is expected of him in every situation. He understands what's expected of the other players along the defensive line and behind him in every situation. So I think that's going to help him make the right decisions when it comes to what he's going to deploy as a pass rusher, or if is this the down where I played a little bit more conservative and I make sure I latch on here and then use my eyes a little bit more, or is this the opportunity where I just try to beat the guy with speed, or is this more of a power opportunity for me? I think he's going to have a lot more knowledge. I think, again, that's going to lead to better performances as well. And it's going to help out these other guys and whoever it is to the side of the field of him opposite. Linebacker is another position they took a big swing at when they brought in Devin Lloyd to just be that true all-around Mike linebacker. They are 4th in linebacker coverage, but 23rd to 26th in run defense, and that's a big concern. Because I think that Devin Lloyd is a great all-around linebacker, but Trevin Wallace as a run defender is just not been good. He's not a great option, and they don't really have any depth around that either. So they're going to be banking on Trevin Wallace developing as a run defender here to assist with what they've built with the front 4, particularly the interior defensive line. But Devin Lloyd, like Jalen Phillips, was brought in because they need to improve that front 7 in order to, again, run that Fangio-style defense that Ejiro Evero wants to run. And, Devin Lloyd last year, 43 tackles, 24 assists. He had back-to-back really great seasons in different ways. Right? Like 2 years ago, it was great run defending. This past year, it was great pass coverage. 3rd in passer rating given up, the number 1 man cover linebacker, 17th in zone coverage, led linebackers in interceptions with 5, only gave up 1 touchdown, 43 receptions given up, 435 yards allowed. It was a good performance from the linebacker position for him in the passing game. He established really well. He got sideline to sideline speed really well. He really improved in that aspect of his game. Kind of settled a little bit in the run defense aspect, 68th in missed tackles, 66th in stops percentage. He had a little bit more blitzing opportunities as well, so I think seeing how that gets worked into this defense will be interesting to see if everyone wants to utilize that. I just, how Devin Lloyd fits in here, again, being thrust into these higher expectations the way Jalen Phillips is, coming over from Jacksonville where he had a really great pass rush in front of him with Josh Hines-Allen and Eric Armstead. A pretty good interior defensive line group for run protection as well with Devon Hamilton mixing in there at nose tackle. So now how he utilizes the group in front of him with Jalen Phillips and Derek Brown and Tershawn Wharton and whoever else you have, Bobby Brown, whoever else you have at the edge position, how he is able to direct as well, because he's the green dot linebacker. So he's got to provide the direction. He's got to provide the pre-snap reads a lot. He's got to communicate all that. And communicating it from a different type of defense than what he was playing in before. There's the added expectations there and how Devin Lloyd is going to respond to that. It's much more significant to the overall production of the defense than what he had in Jacksonville. Because now with light boxes, the expectation is you're going to be a sure tackler in the run game. You're going to be sticky in all aspects of pass coverage. You're not going to miss a lot of tackles. You're going to hit the right gaps. You're going to have gap discipline. When you have to do the quarterback spy, you're going to make sure you get the contain. When things get funneled into you, you're going to finish, and you're going to finish with anticipation, being able to step up into these holes in the run attack to prevent the big run plays. You're not going to get caught up with a pulling guard or with a zone where one of the linemen's getting to the next level. You're not going to get caught in the misdirection. You're going to play with a high run defense IQ that's going to have a ripple effect throughout the rest of the defense and on to guys like Trevon Wallace, who is not great as a run protector. So that is the role of this linebacker group here, and particularly the role of Devin Lloyd, who the expectation is that he plays like a top 5 linebacker in the NFL this year to protect this defense and its execution. Because if Devin Lloyd doesn't perform, particularly in the run game, then this defense is never going to be able to truly create a rhythm for itself. It's going to end up playing from behind. They're not going to be able to dictate the pace of the game the way they want to. And it's going to affect the offense, and it's going to affect what they have going on the back end as well. And you get to their defensive backs, and it is a top-heavy group. A great 1-2 punch on the outside with J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson, and then a whole lot of gross after that. Shao Smith-Wade is your nickel, your slot guy. Fine. You got Will Lee III, who you just brought in from Texas Tech. Absolutely horrific as a run defender. So what he is going to be able to contribute to this team early on is going to be up in the air. You got a Caleb Evans. You got Corey Thornton. There's going to be some type of competition here between corner 3 and corner 6. But you got the top 2 spots figured out. You got J.C. Horn, who people love. I've grown to appreciate him, I guess, now that he's put together some healthy seasons. Had 845 total snaps last year, 837 of them from the outside. Was targeted 59 times, gave up 35 receptions, playing mostly against the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver. So gave up 498 yards on those 35 receptions. They were working the ball down the field to those number 1s. Gave up 5 touchdowns, but also had 5 interceptions, which was first amongst corners. Only had 2 pass breakups, gave the 30th passer rating, took 9 penalties. But when you have to play sticky and you have to be the number 1 guy against the team's number 1 receiver, you're going to take some more penalties. He was 40th in man coverage, 25th in zone, 95th in forced incompletions. You want to see him get more aggressive at the point of attack, at the ball point. get more sticky in zone coverage, get more aggressive into the hands without taking the penalties. Because it seemed like if a pass wasn't being completed, it was because he either intercepted it or it was a bad ball. Like, it really wasn't a whole lot of him being so tight in coverage and all that. So that'll be interesting to watch this upcoming season as he works into more, puts together another healthy season, has a better pass rush now in front of him, and that I think can play really well into JC Horn's game as well, is when you have that great edge rush coming, you hope Jalen Phillips can bring that to your team. You get great coverage in the middle of the field from Devin Lloyd and Trevin Wallace, to where now quarterbacks are going to be getting the ball out maybe a little bit faster than what you're used to in a Fangio-style defense. So you're able to play with more anticipation. You're able to sit on some of these out routes and these comeback routes and these hooks and all that to create more big plays on the defensive side as a playmaking corner. I think that's a huge thing that's in play for JC Horn this upcoming season. And then opposite of him, Mike Jackson, who arguably had a better year than him last year. He was 29th in man, 4th in zone, took more snaps from the outside, had 947 snaps, had 4 interceptions, which was 3rd in the league, gave up only 4 touchdowns, 9 pass breakups, which was 12th in the league, 16th best passer rating given up, and only took 3 penalties. Now, a majority of what he did was against the team's number 2 receiver. So the context is a little bit different than JC Horn's, but there's no reason why Mike Jackson can't build off of this type of a season. It targeted 90 times, gave up 50 catches. That was 28th best completion percentage allowed, 610 yards allowed, 27th in forced incompletions. Again, not a slot guy at all. But that 4th in zone coverage grade, you know this in this Fangio defense, they want to lean on that. So being able to play with great anticipation, being able to play with great instincts and eyes and understanding your responsibilities and breaking off when you need to and playing aggressive when you need to, stepping up when you need to, knowing when not to. He did that incredibly well this past season. So get more of that. At the very least, you have the outside of the field covered, and then you worry about what's going on the inside of the field, which is why you add Devin Lloyd. But who else is there? We talked about Smith Wade, Will Lee, Evans, Thornton. Like, what is even going on here? Then you get a guy like Nick Scott, who's going to be a guy that's going to play that deep center field. So who's going to be the other safety when you play that split safety role? Is there a guy who can play in coverage like that? Like maybe Zakee Wheatley's the guy? But for a team that wants to play like a Fangio style, which is that too high safety stuff as much as they can, you got Trayvon Merrick, Lathan Ransom, who are the opposite of that, right? You get Nick Scott. Like Nick Scott kind of built for this defense. You know, he had 82 tackles last year, 26 assist tackles, targeted 27 times. Only gave up 1 touchdown. Played 762 snaps in a true safety role. 194 box snaps. But a majority of what you're going to see is that too high safety. And he's like a low-end version. Fits it really well, but is a low-end version of it. And especially when he's not getting the help and the communication from the other side of the field, that's also going to affect his game. I wouldn't say dramatically, but it'll affect his game as well. You know, but you get a guy like Trayvon Merrick, who you want to play as like a box safety. So you're going to naturally find yourself in more single high, but then it's like, you know, Zakee Wheatley and like Damani Richardson, like the bodies don't really match what you would expect them to have here. So I would like to see how that develops moving forward. I think from a run defense perspective, you know, they're tier 3, like they're solid in that aspect. I don't know that you're going to be running the ball all that well, breaking the tackles against these guys in the secondary, because they're all quite good. For the most part, J.C. Horn and Merrick are top level. Mike Jackson is a good one. Shao Smith-Wade is a good one. You get towards Nick Scott and Will Lee, you're in trouble. But you also have Sakeem Wheatley and Lathan Ransom, who are going to be rotational pieces for the safety position, who are going to bring great aspects to run defending also. You just wonder who's going to develop into being like a true great cover safety. Because again, at this point, Nick Scott and Trayvon Merry kind of are what they are. Does Lathan Ransom have the athletic profile to become like that true high safety? Sakeem Wheatley, brand new to the league. We'll see what you can get out of him. But I think a huge advantage that you have is you have those outside corners who you can kind of trust to just be out there by themselves doing their thing and let everyone else develop and figure out what they're doing on their own. That's a huge advantage to have as a defensive coordinator, a defensive play caller, defensive coach. As a defensive back coach also. Because then you're worried about mixing and matching just sort of what you got going on in the hashes. And you can adjust what you're doing with your linebackers and with your defensive line to assist with what you have going on between the hashes that might be a detriment otherwise. So overall, it's 22nd pass defense, 26 run defense, an incredibly top-heavy defense. Jalen Phillips, Derek Brown, Devin Lloyd, J.C. Horn, Mike Jackson. Starters, great. Then what you got after that is a lot of role players, a lot of situational football, and a lot of developmental pieces that it's hard to... They're going to pull their weight from play to play. That could greatly affect the overall effectiveness of what this defense is trying to accomplish. I think it's fair. It's a pretty fair